Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is the different types of variables. We know that we collect the data to represent the variables, but we need to talk about the different types. I'm going to talk about 4 types. The first type, sorry, there's a 1 in there. It's not showing up. There it is. The first type is what we call a nominal type of variable or a nominal scaled variable. That's a real mathy term. To talk about the same idea, we sometimes talk about it as a categorical variable. And these kinds of variables are classified by which category they belong to. And for example, you could have a bag of marbles, and you could have it done by the color, which let's say blue, red, and green, and then the number. The blue ones, maybe there's 5, I don't know, the red ones there's 2, and the green one there's 6, okay, whatever it is. These are the categories, and this is basically the count within the category. The thing about these types of variables is you cannot add, subtract, multiply, or divide those numbers in order to produce results. You cannot add 5 plus 2. All what that tells you is that there's 2 different types of variables. It doesn't tell us anything more than that. So you really can't perform the mathematical operations on these. The second type of variable is what we call an ordinal variable. And ordinal variables are definitely what they talk. They talk about rank order, or the order of how things. Examples of this would be race results. And the race results we have here being the scale, being who was first, second, third, and then the actual number would be the number, I don't know, 21. And that's actually someone named Jenny got that. The second runner was maybe number 324, but that was really Phil, some person I just made up. Or the third place was number 1054, right? And that is some other person's name. Again, these kinds of ordinal variables you cannot add 21 and 324 and have it make any sense. You can't divide those and have it make any sense, because these numbers 21, 324, and 1054 are representing an idea of Jenny, Phil, and whoever the third person is, I don't know, Carlos. So those are 2 kinds of variables that it's very hard to produce descriptive statistics. So for these 2 types that we're just talking about, the nominal and the ordinal, we typically do not compute descriptive statistics because they don't have any meaning. What we need to do now is talk about the 2 types of variables that do allow us to talk about descriptive statistics, and these are the interval scaled variables and then the fourth one will be the ratio scales. Okay, so the interval scale variables, they represent raw scores. And there's equal intervals. Intervals between the score. For example, we're going to talk about temperature. And the scale is going to be, I don't know, temp 1, temp 2, temp 3, etc. Well, the value of that is temp 1 might be 79 degrees, temp 2 is 50 degrees, temp 3 is 13 degrees, etc. So when I say equal intervals between scores, it doesn't mean that the intervals between the actual values are the same. It means that we count the temperatures by ones, right? 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 59 degree, 60 degree, essentially like that. The real key to interval scaled variables is that a score of 0 means something. It's not the absence. And what I mean by that is 0, if we had temp 27, let's say, with a score of 0, all what that means is that that's a specific temperature, right? If it's Fahrenheit, it just means it's very cold. Versus the fourth type of variable that we could have, and that fourth type of variable is what we call a ratio scaled. And those ratio scaled variables, they also, in just like intervals, they represent raw scores. They have equal intervals. Between the scores. But the real difference is that, so if we have an example here and we talk about pain level, and we have our scale, and our scale is the patient, right? Patient 1, patient 2, patient 3, and etc. Well, patient 1, if we ask in a medical situation like what is your pain level, and patient 1 says my pain level is at an 8, you know that that means the patient is hurting. If patient 2 says my pain level is at 2, that means they're not really hurting. If patient 3 says their pain level is 0, 0 means, oh, sorry, I spelled that wrong, absence of pain. Whereas up here, when we talk about the 0 in an interval scaled variable, 0 doesn't mean the absence. 0 means something. In a ratio, 0 means absence, means it doesn't exist. A 0 means that patient doesn't have a pain level, or a 0 means that person didn't answer the question, or something like that. So those are the 4 types of variables, and with those 4 types of variables, when we talk about the descriptive statistics, and we talk about the first 2, nominal and ordinal, and then we talk about the second 2, interval and ratio. Interval and ratio, we can perform what we call the computational descriptive statistics. For example, finding the mean, the standard deviation, the variance, the mode, the median, maybe quartile 1, maybe quartile 3, and etc. We can actually compute those. So there are formulas that we'll learn. Formulas that we create numbers, there's a D there, use to describe. Versus if we have nominal and ordinal, you have to transfer them. The computational descriptive statistics. So it's more difficult to perform them. And typically what we do is we use graphs. We use graphs to describe the data. So on this side over here, we use formulas, and on this side over here, we use graphs. So there are 2 different types really of descriptive statistics. There's graphical representations and computational. Okay, these sometimes are more of the qualitative variables, and these over here are what we call the sorry for that, the way I broke that up, but the quantitative variables. So there's a difference between qualitative and quantitative, and we need to understand that there's a difference because you use different techniques to describe the data. Sometimes you use graphs to describe the data, and sometimes you use numbers to describe the data, and we need to talk about those differences.